Hello, everybody. I think we're just live. We just gone live. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, friends. Welcome, dear audience. Welcome to the WildFormat. My name is Ismael, and I will be your host. It's a pleasure. It's an honor for me to be able to guide you through this show that starts just today. So, what is the WildFormat? What is this all about? Well, first of all, it's about data, and it's also about building a relation from data to our environment. So how can we improve the quality of our environment? And even more important than that, it is about human beings, because behind every data set, there is always a human. So this will be basically the spirit of the show. We will be talking about some crazy data science ideas and how they impact on our environment. For that purpose, we will have some speakers. But before we get into the structure of the program, of the show, let me introduce someone that works for Correlate, because everything that we're gonna watch today, the whole show, would not be possible if it were not for Correlate. It exists within the framework of Correlate. So let me introduce Free, and of course, Free, please introduce yourself and Correlate, please.
Hi, thank you, Ismail, for the very nice introduction, and welcome everyone. I'm very excited that this is happening. My name is Fee. I work for Correlate as the COO, which means I'm mostly responsible for data for good projects, but I'm also kind of always organizing stuff like this. And but for this event, I didn't have to do anything, because our volunteers and the guys from the WildFormat basically did everything on their own. So yeah, just 2 sentences about Correlate, and then I will lead you to the amazing program. Correlate is a network of over 1,800 data scientists, and we do skilled volunteering projects. That means we connect nonprofit organizations with teams of data science volunteers, and we help the nonprofits with their data challenges, while at the same time our volunteers get the chance to apply their skills. And in addition, we also do education stuff for nonprofit organizations and also for our network. And this amazing meetup today is part of this education offering. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Such an amazing turnout today. And I will hand back over to Ismail.
Thank you, Free. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for presenting Correlate. Probably, I'm pretty sure we will having you back at some point in this show, or maybe in another in the future. So now let me give you a brief information about the structure of the show today. So as I said, we're having to talk about data science projects, and talking also about the persons, the humans that are working on those projects. We will have 3 speakers, and we will also we'll be having some music that will just spice the whole thing a bit up, and yes, having some question answers, and try to have a relaxed tour through these 3 presentations. Exactly, so that's more or less it. Let me just now introduce the first person with a brief introductory video of him. I'm talking about Bijan Fala. He works for the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, and his topic will be coping with drought flood via AI, artificial intelligence, and climate modeling. So now let's take a look on the video.
که خوردم از دهان بندی در این دریا در این دریا که خوردم از دهان بندی در این دریا در این دریا
Hi, Bijan. How are you? Do you listen to me? Can you hear me? Bijan? I think we're having some
Yeah,
audio.
I'm here.
Ah, you're here. You're there.
Yes,
Perfect,
yes.
Bijan.
Hello.
Well, welcome to the WildFormat. And before just jumping into your presentation today, I was just curious about the music, the intro we just heard. Just give me some info. Why did you choose that song? That really amazing and really mystical song, and also the picture and maybe a few words on the plot.
Yeah, hello everybody. First of all, the reason I have chosen this music, to be honest, I don't know, but it gives me a good energy. Actually, it's a mixture of our traditional music, Persian traditional music, and the techno music. So it has kind of best of the two worlds. So it's on one side, the lyrics is actually very deep, and also the rhythm. That's what I like, and it gives me energy. Yeah, and about the plot,
It has a lot of power, of course, indeed. Please go on.
Yeah. It's kind of I just simply like it. And if I tell some sentence about the favorite plot, actually what you saw was the temperature anomaly of the last 1,000 years. One, of the last millennium, reconstructed from the so-called proxy data. So what you see is during the last 1,000 years, we had a kind of slight cooling. Because the human, we were not active at that time. So that's what you see is a natural variability of the Earth system, actually the temperature. So we are cooling down till we have the Industrial Revolution. And then you see that the temperature is rising. So this line looks like a hockey stick. So that's the hockey stick plot, which was created by Michael Mann. And
sorry, one little question. You say hakiosic, right? So what is that? Because I'm not a scientist at all.
Yeah, if you look at the hockey stick, this is a sport, the hockey. So it looks like
hockey. Okay, hockey.
It actually looks like this line that you see. You have a cooling, and then you have this bending at the end. Yeah,
so it really looks like a mess. We're messing up with the temperature, right, in the world. Right?
Yeah, actually, we call this normal period that the temperature of the Earth was changing like within a 1 degree band. So it was like during the last 8,000 years. We call this period Holocene. So where the temperature was more or less stable within 1 degree band. And that's where the Homo sapiens started to build the civilizations. And then now we are at the edge of going to another ecological epoch, which we call it Anthropocene, where we as humans are taking control of the global, the environmental changes.
Yeah, very interesting, also very concerning, right? Just a few words about your picture. Where were you at that point in your life, lying on the floor? Just give us a few insights. And then we move on.
It's back in Iran, in my hometown, Babol, in north of Iran. So it's at the night of our New Year. We call it Nowruz. And it was actually right after 8 years of war between Iran and Iraq. So we had this war, long war, 8 years of war between these two countries, Iran and Iraq. So that was kind of a milestone for me, or tipping point in my life. That and actually I'm sleeping very, very deeply near to the heater. So that's one of the photos that I like.
I understand. Very nice picture, Bijan. So now it's your floor now. It's time for you to present us your project.
Thank you very much. So I start right away. So you can see my slides, yeah? So we are facing serious crisis as a consequence of human-induced environmental change. So Central Asia is one of the most vulnerable regions of the world, highly tuned to very small changes in water availability. Lakes are drying out. Floods are being more frequent. Here you see the annual air temperature changes with respect to 1979 to 2009 period. Global trend is shown by solid line, and in Central Asia by dashed line. What is interesting here is that the Central Asian warming is now more than half a degree larger than the global one since the beginning of 21st century. As an example, Oral city, located in West Kazakhstan, was completely flooded within a day during April 2011. Generally in Kazakhstan, more than 300,000 people are affected by flood, and about $3 billion are lost per year. And global warming is assumed to be one of the major drivers of such extreme events. Let's have a deeper look. On the right panel, I show the Ural River discharge at a point near to Oral city. It shows how much water is passing in a cross-section of river per second. As you see, the values have gone from almost nothing to its peak in 2-day periods, and the infrastructure could not tolerate that shock. On the left panel, you see how the intensified discharge reaches the city and heads southward to Caspian Sea. But what is the mechanism behind such extreme events? A snow accumulation at the mountains during the winter act as a water reservoir for such rivers in Central Asia. In the spring, when the temperature rises, the river discharge will increase as a consequence of the snow melting process. However, if this forming happens abruptly, the whole system collapses and floods might shape. Unfortunately, it has been observed that the extremes get significantly extremer under human-induced environmental changes. And we know that the warming trends in Central Asia accelerated the environmental crisis under the wrong water management. For example, the Aral Sea, one of the biggest lakes in Central Asia, which is larger than some of the European countries, has lost a huge portion of its water within the 21st century. and such phenomena look to be irreversible. Under such situations, knowing the water availability in the region several months in advance might reduce the social, economical, and political impacts. The question here is, if we could forecast extreme events in advance using machine learning, we had to make two important assumptions here. Number one, that these events are mainly driven by weather conditions. And number two, the available seasonal weather forecasts have predictive skills over Central Asia. Our mission is to find a supervised regression model which maps the time series of weather variables to river discharge data. By knowing the river discharge time series, we could calculate the start day of snowmelt and potential flooding, as well as water availability for the vegetation period for the agriculture sector. For training the regression model, we used 26 weather variables from the German climate forecast system and observed river discharge measured at the river. The German climate forecast system is a joint project involving researchers from the Hamburg University, Max Planck Institute for Meteorology, and Germany's National Meteorological Service. The researchers have spent more than 5 years to develop a so-called air system model, which simulates all the 5 components of the climate system: the atmosphere, all the gases within the system; the cryosphere, all the ice within the system, like ice sheets, glaciers, sea ice; the lithosphere, the rocky part of the earth; the hydrosphere, all the water within the system, like rivers, lakes, oceans; and the biosphere, all the living part of the system, the animals, trees, grassland, and of course, the most influential species, the humans. These 5 components have very chaotic nonlinear interactions. For example, if the temperature rises in a system by increasing greenhouse gas concentrations and trapping of the incoming solar radiation, the sea ice melts. That would impact the sea surface temperatures, which also reduces the ocean circulations, which transport heat from the equator to higher latitudes and from surface to deeper layers of the ocean. Melting glaciers will make the Earth's surface darker, which leads to more melting. We call it a positive feedback. So you can imagine how complex the Earth system modeling would be. And finally, totally 10^12 data points have been used in this analysis, and total number of 3,600 observations. So the number of features were way larger than the observations. To decrease the dimensionality of the features space, firstly we selected the n nearest neighbors to the station point from the global forecast data. Secondly, to account for possible climatic teleconnections like El Niño Southern oscillations or Arctic oscillations within the global network of the dataset, we use empirical orthogonal function analysis to add n leading principal component time series to the global data. Here you see the first EOF patterns of the sea level pressures, empirical orthogonal function patterns. And finally, we reduced the number of features to several dozens using another layer of principal component analysis. We repeated the whole algorithm many times to find an optimal number of features for training the regression model. After testing a hierarchy of regression models, starting from multivariate linear regression to boosted trees, we decided to apply the XGBoost method, which delivered us the best performance with less training effort. Here we present the first results for the regression model for Oba River in Kazakhstan. Blue line shows the observed time series of the river discharge in year 2017, and the dashed black line, the mean of river discharge from 1993 to 2016. And the gray lines indicate individual years from the observation. This year, year 2017, was a wet year, and the regression model, the red line, also shows values larger than the usual values with underestimation during April. We conclude that the German Earth system model has a predictive potential and ask the community to use this data. So from climatologists to data scientists, your planet needs you now. Come and use the model and observation data sets to tackle very serious environmental problems. Please get in touch with our team, Anastasia, Yuli, and myself, who are working on seasonal river discharge forecasting using AI, along with the physics or process-based hydrological models. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Bijan. Thank you very much also for the nice presentation. Very interesting. I was just thinking this is a really a good opportunity to let me know if I get it right. Okay, a good opportunity to be able to forecast when is the best time to go and plant and go and do the work on the fields, and when not to, right? To like forecast dry seasons, right?
Yeah, that's a very important piece of information. If you have that information like 1 or 2 or 3 months in advance, usually after this kind of Earth system model forecasts or predictions, there is another layer of a study, like we call it impact studies. So wherever the climate or weather is having an impact, then you can use this information to use this piece of information to make better decisions for your decision making. For example, in health, or I think after my talk, Walter is gonna giving more application of weather the phenomena which are impacted by weather, but more or less in a smaller time window. But here I was talking about the so-called seasonal predictions. So you're talking about prediction time window of 3 months or 2 months or 1 month. So if you go beyond 2 weeks, you're talking about seasonal predictions. But if you're talking about next day or next week, you are in the weather forecast time window. And such kind of information would be important in many sectors, also in the energy sector, or of course also in agriculture and anything that is related to water. So it depends. The life in Central Asia is depending on water.
Nice, Bijan. Thank you very much for the presentation. Maybe we will be having some questions, so please stay here in the show.
Yeah, sure.
And for the audience, thank you, Bijan. For the audience, just feel free to write your questions on the chat here on YouTube. And also for Bijan, or in general, your comments, and we will be more than pleased to show them up live in the show. So now move on to some music videos. So today we, as I mentioned in the beginning, we are going to have also a musical experience. And today the band, the music project we chose is named the Mama Yaku Project. What is the Mama Yaku Project? It is the project of an Ecuadorian and Venezuelan, his roots are Ecuadorian and Venezuelan, guy that lives in Germany, and his name is Esteban Urano, and his music is very, very appealing. You will see it. I don't want to describe it, just let you make the experience. But what I want to say now is he has been working on the project since 2017. The name is Mama Yaku, and the first song we're going to listen to is called Quilla. Quilla means moon in Quechua. This is the ancient language in many parts of South America. It is a musicalization of a full moon ritual. So just let's listen together to Quilla.
planta se muere sin calor.
Wow, amazing, amazing piece of music. Esteban with the Mama Yaku project. I just for the moment don't have the name of the singer, but we will be posting it later on this project, since we will be listening to two more amazing songs of Mama Yaku, the music project. By the way, if you want, you can listen to Mama Yaku on Spotify. Well, now I hope you're having fun. Please don't hesitate. If you have any comments or questions, just put them on YouTube on the chat. And now let's move on to the second speaker of this evening. I'm talking about Walter Acevedo Valencia. He is Colombian and works for the German Weather Service. And the topic is how crowdsourcing and artificial intelligence are enhancing weather forecasting. Now let's take a look at his. Hi, Walter. How are you?
Very good, Isma. Thank you.
Welcome. Welcome to WildFormat. Let's have a look at your video. What do you think about that?
I'm excited. I'm quite excited to see how you mix this information.
Nice. Then see you in a minute.
Espíritu burlón, oh, tú no puedes conmigo, oh, conmigo, oh, conmigo. Espíritu burlón,
If I was not presenting the show, I would jump and start dancing, Walter. I love that song. Why that song? Why did you pick that song, salsa song? I mean, this is, if I'm right, this is directly from the first wave of salsa, right?
Yeah,
correct. I'm wrong. So
yeah,
tell me about that, and also about the picture. Why you chose that picture?
Yeah, that's kind of an old-fashioned salsa song. I mean, I'm being, for my whole life addicted to salsa. Yeah, somehow I love this combination of African, Spanish, and indigenous influence. I mean, salsa really gives me a lot of energy, and I love it. I dance very, very much. I love it, and so that's why I put it, because it's really energetic music, and also beautiful. And
you also dance well. Do you dance well?
I am not the one to say that. I guess you should ask the public, but I like it very much.
Yeah, it's like when you ask artists, "Are you an artist?" and they say no. This is something the others have to answer to that question. I understand, but I pretty much believe you're a good dancer, Walter. It's maybe about your plot. Why in the picture?
Okay, the picture. Okay, the plot. This is kind of a very crazy plot, actually. I mean, that comes from a story of Richardson, one of the pioneers of weather forecasting. That was after the First World War, and then he hypothesized that to make a prediction of the whole globe, one would need some kind of 64,000 people working together in this kind of construction there, this kind of crazy building there. And you would need someone leading the people and say who was late, who was too soon, and yeah, kind of at that point, there were no computers, or maybe there were no computers at all. So that was
How old is the picture?
That's from 1922.
Wow.
And so it was a very interesting idea at some point. And okay, now we do it with supercomputers. But at that point, it was really, many people thought that was impossible. That was just a crazy idea.
Yeah. How it often is, crazy ideas that then become reality. Okay, Walter, so now about your picture, and then we jump into your presentation.
Okay. Yeah, the picture, I was in, that's in a small fox. That's in Suezca, Colombia, a place where I lived for a long while. I used to climb a lot there, rock climbing. And so that day I was with my ex-wife, so we were just around, and then we saw these little fox around, and they are really surly. They don't want to have any contact with humans, but somehow we were not that disturbing for him, and then we stayed there many hours just trying to, just to let him be comfortable. And at some point he came and ate from my hand. That was really nice.
Maybe he didn't felt you were a human. I don't know, because normally they're afraid of humans.
Yeah, they don't like humans, but I know it was a very kind of magical moment, I would say. That's why I put it there.
Yeah, it looks magical, Walter. Thanks. Thank you very much for that introduction. Now let's jump into your presentation, Walter.
Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, perfect. So I guess it's now working.
Yes, working.
Okay, so I will jump into it. Okay, so thank you very much, Isma, for the introduction. So now after the technical talk of Bijan Fala about climate issues in general, I'm going to jump into shorter time scales, meaning from minutes to weeks, and consider the weather problem, which also has very strong impacts on the environment and also in human activities. Just to have an idea, for example, when we plan a barbecue, we have a look at the app, the prediction, and according to that, we decide whether to do it or not. That's something kind of funny, but actually very useful. But we can also avoid, for example, accidents when there is black ice on the street. That's something that we can prevent if we have a look at the warnings from the weather system of a particular country. For example, that would be the citizens which are affected by weather. But there are other big sectors, for example, farming. Agriculture is very important, and that's something that the next talk is going to touch on by Damon. Other sectors are, for example, transportation, of course, cars, airplanes, and many others. But actually, two important sectors that I want to focus on are renewable energies and autonomous driving. These two new sectors are on a hype right now, of course, because of climate change and because of other issues in society. And those two sectors are really dependent on weather, of course. Renewable energies, the amount of production that you have in a wind farm, for example, is very dependent on the wind, on the weather. And autonomous driving, for example, is quite dependent on weather. The algorithms driving these cars need to know very well what is the state of the street, whether there is snow, whether it is wet or not, and that's of course something that strongly depends on the weather. Okay, so let's get into business. So in order to forecast the state of the atmosphere, several agencies around the globe use the following approach, which consists on the one hand of an atmospheric model, or actually a whole hierarchy of models, going from global to regional models with geographical grids of increasing resolution. In these models, the physics and chemistry of the atmosphere is simulated at every grid point. On the other hand, the slow components of the Earth, for example, vegetation, sea ice, also human activities, are considered steady, so they don't change, as opposed to climate studies. But actually, for us, that's quite precise because our lead times are quite short, and so that's as I said, we can live with that, and that makes everything easier for us. Okay. On the other hand, we have the models, and now we need observations. These can be in situ observations, coming, for example, from synoptic stations or radio zones. So they are globes that go through the atmosphere and give us information about the whole profile of the atmosphere. Also buoys on the sea, and also aircraft, which is quite important and was heavily affected by COVID, for example. We have also remote sensing, mainly satellite and radar. These sources of information are really important right now. We really depend on them. And there is a new source of information, a new type of observations they are the so-called crowdsourced observations, coming from the crowd, coming from normal people. And there, for example, the transportation system and the private weather stations are very important examples of that. Okay, and as a final step, we need to put these observations, we need to inject them into the model in order to synchronize the state of the model with reality. Otherwise, we are going to have a forecast which look kind of okay, physically consistent, but actually not realistic, and that's of course not the idea. And this injection of this information is done via a process called data assimilation, which is essentially a supervised machine learning problem in a really high dimensional space, which makes it very complicated and also costly. On top of that, this problem has to be solved very frequently, meaning every hour, or right now even more frequently. And so these two aspects make the problem quite expensive. And because of that, only countries can afford having the supercomputers and all the infrastructure to have a proper weather forecasting. Okay, and now coming back to the initial question of this talk, what can AI, artificial intelligence, bring to this topic? And to understand that, I would like to highlight that conventional atmospheric models are essentially process-based simulators. Meaning they have processes, for example, physics of chemistry, as I already mentioned, and they can be. These models can be very precise and stable if the processes involved are well known and can be efficiently simulated. Unfortunately, or fortunately for artificial intelligence people, for this crowd, there are very clear counterexamples of this. For example, the observations normally have many biases. They are not real. There are many confounding factors there, and also if we have, for example, human factors involved or unknown mechanisms there, it can get really messy. Other point where AI can be very promising, or it is already quite promising. It has it has shed a lot of new light on this area, are the processes which are not resolved by the grid of the model, meaning convection. When we have clouds that go very high, and then you have a big storm, that's convection, and that's very difficult to model, and also turbulence. And finally, there are also processes which are very difficult, very costly to simulate. For example, radiation transfer for satellites. That's something very, very geek, very specialized, but still, I wanted to mention it. Okay, so in this talk, I want to focus on two particular projects, both funded by the Federal Ministry of Transport and Digital Infrastructure from Germany, via an initiative called mFund, which is essentially supporting research and development on database applications for mobility 4.0. The first of this project is called FlowCar, which is a collaboration between the German Weather Service and Audi, the car manufacturer. And the idea was to use cars as mobile weather stations. Here, our partner Audi installed high-quality but affordable sensors in their cars, and we together investigated the many factors that contaminate these signals, meaning, for example, velocity. A car that is moving is going to measure differently temperature, for example. Also, infrastructure. A car that is in a garage or going through a tunnel, of course, is going to give us a biased information about the environment. But also more subtle stuff, for example, the color of the car or the design of the car, or whether the color of the car is matte or not. That's going to play a role there. And well, so in order to cope with all these confounding factors, we developed a bias correction algorithm. And for that, we carried out several campaigns in order to collect enough information, enough labels to train our bias correction models. That we did with the cars I just mentioned, our project cars, but also with mobile synoptic stations, meaning high quality meteorological sensors placed on a particular car from the German Weather Service. So those are very good references. But also something in the middle, the so-called weather box, which is essentially a box mimicking the front glass of a car, where all the sensors of our cars were installed. Using all this information, we developed this bias correction algorithm. For that, we use deep learning and also physically based corrections. And the results were very good. So here we can see, for example, that the blue line, which is the corrected signal, was quite consistent with the references coming from different observational sources, of high quality. Although the raw signal presented really frequent and strong anomalies. So that's one of the projects we are very happy with the results, and we hope that we can continue this project, which is about to end. Secondly, I want to mention the ICAM Cloud Apps project, which is a collaboration with the German Weather Service and Reunivat, a French company. And there, the idea is to use the information collected by webcams, both measuring visible spectrum and infrared spectrum, which is very nice because we can see the heat of the clouds and everything. So there, first of all, we developed, once again using deep learning, an algorithm able to automatically classify clouds. So this algorithm tells us if in a particular area of the photo we have clouds or not, and whether this cloud is a cumulus or a cirrus or a cumulonimbus, something like that, or maybe there's no cloud at all there. That worked very well with rather traditional image recognition strategies, as I said, based on deep learning. And and we got this information, but to use it in our models, we need also to find the model equivalent of these photos. And for that, we developed a so-called observation operator that essentially maps the grid and the variables of the model into the camera space. So it tells us what the camera would see if the camera was looking at the model state. That those developments had worked very well, and we have already preliminary results on the simulation of this information. And we have seen that we can indeed reduce the error of our predictions. There are other areas where AI can also be very promising for weather prediction. For example, using more complicated crowdsourced observations. For example, private weather station. This is very nice. So there are many companies. For example, NetAtmo. That's one of the companies we are working with right now, and we have stations at home which have unfortunately strong biases. For example, because of the heating system, and that's something we are working in. Also, photos and text from people. From mobiles, and there is important to be able to detect, for example, sarcasm. Otherwise, the text that we get there is going to be misleading for the system. And there we need NLP and sentiment analysis and all these strategies from AI. There are other two areas which are very important. I don't want to focus much on them. One of them is to make the models. To use AI to make the models faster, replacing areas of the model which are too costly. And finally, we want to use new techniques which are more compatible with this process-based approach, which are essentially explainable AI and physics-aware AI. Well, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Walter. Thank you, Walter. We should be having this kind of effect of applause, please, production team, for the next show. Just keep that in mind.
Oh, now we have a crazy...
Now we have a little problem, but Walter, I just was wondering, I have one question. As stated below here, feel free to post your question in the chat on YouTube. We will be picking them and maybe stating them at the end of the show. But right now, I have one question, Walter. Since we all care for the environment, and we know airplanes do a lot of damage to the environment, right?
Okay.
So we're trying to not to use them as much as we did before Corona. So do you think it is possible to replace that data that is gathered from airplanes through all this data from mobile phones, photos, and so on that you mentioned in your presentation?
Yeah, for sure. The thing that we have many different of observations, and they're complementary. So the idea is that at some point we don't depend that much on in situ observation, which is already the case. For example, synoptic stations are really important, but actually more for calibration purposes, because the information you get from the other sources is just much bigger. So this whole area is changing a lot, and let's see. As I said, aircraft data is very important because it gives us direct information what is happening up there. Yeah, that's kind of a controversial topic.
Very controversial, Walter. So maybe we will have some more questions by the end of the show, especially for you. But now, thank you very much for your presentation. It was very interesting. And before we move to the next music video of the Mayaku project, please let me tell you that we will be showing our Instagram and social media accounts from the WildFormat, but also from Correlate. So they will be showing up. If you want to follow us, just follow those links, guys. Thank you, Walter. So now we will be presenting the second song of Mamayaku. I just got a message from Esteban, the producer. We made a little mistake in the first song. The first song was called Una Llamarada. The song that is coming now, it's Kia. So I apologize for that. Now let's take a look on Kia of the Mamayaku music project.
Eki mau mau me
Whoa, that was really a lot of power coming from Mamayaku. I would like to describe this. I mean, this is kind of a Latin American native electronic music with a lot of spirit, and I'm very grateful that we can show you these songs here in the WildFormat. And if you want to listen more of Mamayaku, please don't hesitate to go to Spotify and find a profile and listen to more music. Now we're stepping into the next speaker and his introductory video. I'm talking about Damon Reyes Dana. He's German-Iranian. He works in Charvio Bay ASF Digital Farming, and his topic will be Sprayless Harvest More, Satellites and AI for Sustainable Precision Agriculture. Let's take a look at his introductory video.
What we're living in, let me tell ya. Yeah, it's a world that man can eat at all. When things are big, that should be small. Who can tell what magic spells we'll be doing for us? And I'm giving up my love to this world, only to be told I can't see, I can't breathe, no, my will will be. And nothing's gonna change the way we live, 'cause we can always take but never give. And now the things are changing for the worse. See, wow, it's a crazy world we're living in, and I just can't see that half of us immersed in sin is all we have to give these futures made of virtual insanity. Now always seem to be governed by this love we have for useless twisting of that new technology. Oh, now there is no sound, but we all live underground. And I'm thinking what a mess we're in, hard to know where to begin. If I could slip the secret ties of earth the man has made, and now every mother can choose a color of her child. That's not nature's way. Well, that's what they suggest today. There's nothing
Nice,
to do
nice.
but pray.
Hi,
I
Damon.
think it's time to
Hi, Smith. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I welcome you. So, I love that song. I mean, this is a 90s song, right?
Right.
I'm right.
So
Yeah. So,
yeah. So as everyone explained their song, so I think it's from around like the 90s, and I think Jamiroquai, the lyrics are all about it's like about technological pessimism. So how bad actually technology is. But I find it hilarious because like the video is only possible to it's like a product of pure technology, and all the funky vibe doesn't catch up with the pessimism that is in the lyrics. So that's actually why I took that song. Yeah.
nice, Damon. I love that song. So maybe tell me about the picture you showed also. I saw some boats, and you were on the beach. Where were you?
So that was the last day, let's say, of Corona, and I was or the first day,
Last day
sorry,
of Corona.
the other way around. So that was one day before I was in Morocco, and all the borders closed down. So this was not the last happy day, but one of the nicer days before Corona started. So that's why I chose that one.
Very nice picture. Very nice profile of you also, Damon. And about your plot before jumping into your presentation. So tell me about these kind of funny colors there. I mean, you know, I'm an economist. I don't know what you are showing us there. Why did
So
you
we are
pick
later maybe going into detail, but this is how we, in the end, define for each farmer, let's say, some kind of management biomass zones in their field. So this is some place in France, if I am right, and so around those fields, you can see how it looks regularly within RGB colors, and then you can see in the field what happens if you do some unsupervised learning, supervised learning, and in the end get a estimate of the biomass of that field.
Wow, interesting.
Great.
So let's jump into your presentation, Damon.
Yes, let's go. So I want to introduce you to the topic of digital farming, what challenges we face, how we solve them nowadays with models from not only AI, let's say starting from classical statistics, going to regular machine learning, but also in the very end, also using, for example, generative adversarial networks. Agenda is very short, so I'm just telling you why digital farming, and I think we will not do 3 use cases. I will just show you 2. The third, maybe if we have more time, but this will take too much time. So to frame a little bit why digital farming is maybe needed is that the challenges that we see in agriculture are addressed by a lot of sustainable development goals of the UN. You can see 3 of them here. Most important one being end hunger and achieve food security, but also having sustaining ecosystems. Currently, we see a rising world population, and even though we made progress with global hunger, global warming is kind of undermining these efforts, and we might not be able to catch up with this increasing population. Why is this? So 80% of the arable land is already used, and we are estimating that food production must probably increase by 70%, but this can not only be done by using the remaining 20% of the land. So what is a farmer's view on this? I was introducing this presentation with Harvest More with Less. So the farmers see themselves confronted with a lot of environmental challenges, as you can see on this slide, as well as regulatory decrees that force them to use less plant protection products. And that's why I always encourage people to take over the farmer's view, point of view, because they are in a very big conflict. So as an end user, we want from them high quality food, low prices, being climate friendly, being bee friendly, and having an income that is maybe not only relying on subsidies, but they can generate their income themselves. What we try to do is to resolve at least some of these conflicts for farmers. The very general, or let me first show you. So the main problem is limited arable land that is available for crop production. And what we are trying to do is showing cultivation techniques through digital tools to optimize yields in this case. The very general product that we are offering looks into all aspects of agriculture. We try to gather as many information as possible from different sources to have a holistic view of the field. Satellite imagery is one part of it. With satellite imagery, I already have shown you, we try to get information about the biomass distribution. When I write field data, I mean something like, for example, terrain or soil information that are usually gathered by national institutes. They also don't differ that much in the time dimension. Weather we get from different providers, private or public. And then you also have the machinery itself, which is nowadays usually equipped with GPS and gives us information about what has been sprayed and what has been harvested with georeference data. The other things that you can see here, so drone imagery, smartphone data, and sensor data on field, they are not that scalable because we try to get everything from satellites usually and don't have to buy additional tools, but they are at least a good way to calibrate our models also. If you have just a remotely sensed field from satellite imagery, it's also nice to have something from a drone that is much closer. So that would be the very first part of what we are doing. So collecting data, understanding what is happening locally. The mid part is kind of the magic, right? So that is the AI, what we call in our company agronomic decision engine, where we're analyzing and planning the agronomical part, and then we give out an action recommendation. And I will go into detail with 2 use cases. So use case 1 would be variable plant protection with satellite imagery. Plant protection could be anything, could be herbicides, fungicides, insecticides. So this is the corporate nicer word for it, but I use it here because it's a more broader term instead of having 3 different terms for it. So what farmers currently are doing usually is that they do something what we call they're applying a flat rate. So they're not looking into different parts of the field where they could spray, for example, herbicides differently, but instead they're doing a flat rate. What we are proposing is that to do this variably, to do all the management practices that a farmer can do, starting also from seeding, as I said, insecticides, pesticides, and so on. All of these could be done variably, and in that case, as you can see, this is much less than before. Save a lot of product, which is not only ecologically better, but also economically better. How could that look like? So the very first part of that is having the satellite imagery, and the satellite is usually, we have a lot of satellites, some are public, like Sentinel-1 and 2, and there are also now private companies that deliver more recent, let's say, or more regular satellite data. These need to be, and this is a little bit like in the 2 presentations that you have seen before, these need, for example, to be atmospherically corrected. This is done with us internally. When these are atmospherically corrected, and also we have discarded images that have clouds in them, we would then calculate something called leaf area index. Some of you, maybe if you have a geographical background, you maybe also know something called NDVI. Both are kind of proxies for, let's say, the biomass on the field. We are believing more into the leaf area index, but because this is something that is also an absolute unit and not relative unit. And how we model this over time is based on a spatiotemporal machine learning model. Based on this, we would also put into this some agronomic logic into it to identify the correct amount of, in this case, for example, fungicide that should be applied to different parts of the field. So as you can see in the bottom part here, so now the coloring is a bit different, but instead of showing, let's say, an RGB picture of the field, you would instead get a zoned or clustered map of the field. And each of these, now each pixel gets a spraying amount allocated, which we call the zone spray map. How does this go into the field? So it's very simple. It's a standardized format. Usually it's ISO XML. You can put it on a USB stick, put it into your combine. Combine can do it, or not a combine, but a sprayer. And the sprayer would then exactly spray what is needed on each patch of the field. Use case 2 would be automatic buffer zones. So this goes a little bit into land cover classification. So imagine you want to spray something. Imagine Germany, so very strict about what to spray where. You want to spray some kind of herbicide, and then you need to know all the regulatory decrees. For example, you have your field, and around that field you have some water body, some river. Maybe even you have a neighboring kindergarten or something, and somewhere else you have a forest. All of these have different kinds of distances that they have to be fulfilled while spraying. So what is happening? We get the regular zone spray map that you saw before. This is, let's say, the very square form of a field. We get this zone spray map. We do some, I again cannot go too much into detail. We do some land cover classification in that case. We identify the sensitive zones. So it's not only identification itself, but also giving each instance its corresponding name. So is it a water body? Is it a forest? What is it? Or is it a kindergarten or even something else? This is kind of matched with the regulatory decrees. And we would then give an automated recommendation at which part of the field you are allowed to spray and where you are not allowed to spray. So that would look, let's say, basically like this. So you would get some red areas that are sensitive areas that these should be respected, and there in these areas you're not allowed to spray anything at all. Let's say, good thing about this is that we also take care of the regulatory part of that. So you, in the end, will just get this map. In the end, will not have anything to do with reading it yourself, contacting some ministry or something. So everything is done for you. So the last use case, I'm just showing you maybe two things of that. So we have something that is called scouting. I wanted to try not to make this too much product driven. So we have one product which is basically an app. You can just download it, and this is helping farmers with each decisions, with all the decisions that go into the field. So one very interesting thing I would say is we can, if you take a picture, you go into your field, you take a picture of your field, and then you can determine the weeds in the field. So weeds are those crops or those plants that you don't want to have on your field. And what we achieve to do is not only to count the weeds, but also have something like a multi-object detection. So you could have multiple different weeds and identify all of them, even if they are different. And if we are not able to find the exact species, we would go up I called it now the taxonomy ladder. So if we don't find the species, I don't know in English what the next one is, but then we would go into the family, I don't know. So that's kind of regulated with the cost structure that we imposed on the model. And then on the right side, I'm not going into detail, you can also count insects and also identify different kinds of insects in these yellow traps. You can identify different diseases. You can quantify the leaf damage on a field. So this is some kind of segmentation. You can count how many crops emerged, and you can also make an estimation of how much nitrogen your plant has, because also some phones have very good different sensors. So with those sensors, it's sometimes possible to get very accurate nitrogen estimates. So last one here. Availability and spatio-temporal resolution of agricultural data is still kind of limited. So we're still kind of, I would say, in the beginning. So a lot is still to come. And I think the future of digital farming will in the end be also hardware driven. So we will have smart farming machinery that will really not be rely on satellite data, but really have everything embedded within the machinery. Until then, we will look into maybe also sensor fusion. And there is vast potential for digital solutions. So I've not gone into detail how we're using guns, but maybe we can talk about that later. And also temporally where neural networks would of course be nice, but then you need a lot of data. And this is something that we still are lacking, because standardization is still a big topic in agriculture. So that's it from me.
Thank you, Damon. Thank you for an interesting presentation. I was just wondering, I mean, I live here next to the fields in Rottgau, Germany. You know, I used to live in Frankfurt, but now I see they choose one big field and let the other fields rest for 1 year or two, right? This is the way it works nowadays, more or less.
Let's say from EU regulations, you have something called crop rotation. So you usually have to, you cannot have the same crop over and over again. But this is also usually agricultural practice, that you just leave a field for a whole year. I've not heard of yet, but could be that you let it regenerate. That is, I would say, agricultural practice since a lot of years, I guess. So.
And before just going to the next part of the show, just one question. So, when do you think this is coming? Like just working on a few patches and When do
So
you
the
think
machine-
it's going to be reality? Because it's very interesting. I mean, this is something very clever and very good for the environment, but how to convince the people that own the fields, and because they have all, like, I think, narrow mindset, I think. What do you think on that?
the thing is that there's this cliche that we sometimes think of farmers as people that are narrow-minded. I have not made this experience, so I would say that a lot of farmers are very open-minded in this regard. But of course, especially the machinery is super expensive, so I would expect this maybe to become reality in 5 years. But then you also have to consider that in Germany, for example, farms are very small, so you would rather see these things actually in most probably first in Brazil and North America. So places where you would rather not see, where would you not expect, let's say, something sustainable in that sense. But I assume that we will first see this in the next few years in Brazil, maybe in 3 or 4 years.
Interesting.
Yes.
Well, that's interesting. And I thank you very much, Damon, for the presentation. I would like to invite all of the speakers now to join us for the question and answers round. Hi, Walter. Hi, Bijan. How are you?
Fine, great, thanks.
Yeah, very good, very good.
Very nice. So we have, I think, a couple of questions that were stated during the show on YouTube. There we have the first question. Do you, or would it help to account for changes in relationships of model features for the future? For example, acceleration of processes? This
I
one
think
is
that for me.
For Bijan.
I think that question is for me. So definitely, that's the thing that we have to do, because every statistical model has this stationarity assumption. So what we build today might not work for the future, as everything. I mean, if you add these some kind of trends that are increasing trends, for example, if you like the CO2 concentration, so we are going to new kind of climates or new era. So if you build a model which is for working for present, might not work for the future.
Nice.
If I understood the question right.
I hope so, Bijan. So, are there any more questions? Yeah. So, approaching states the question. Approaches like this deal with the consequences, effects of climate change.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, how could data science also help support the efforts of preventing climate change in the first place?
Yeah, that's a very, very interesting question. At the first place to tackle the climate change, I think maybe I'm not qualified for such question, because it's more or less a kind of political question. But from my personal point of view, I think also that politics has their stick in the hand, so they they can make the bigger change. But I would be happy if the data scientists don't work for companies that are initially that they are making these problems. Or from our side, for example, one of the problems that we have, maybe in the very near predictions that we do, for example, for the next year, or decadal predictions for giving for 10 years, we have a lot of uncertainty. So that's a thing that we can show that, okay, if you show the policymakers that what's going to happen in 2 years, in 3 years, with a better certainty. So if we make our models better, if we can cover some of the phenomena that are not captured by the Earth system models now, we might help the community to show the bigger impacts which are very near to us. So then we can have, maybe we can absorb more attention from the politicians. And I think all of us have to be politically more active.
Thank you, Bijan. So,
you're welcome.
Is there any more question? The last one, a short one. Do you think there is a place for agroforestry, permaculture to include in the farming system? Who feels like answering that?
I would maybe answer that. So I would say, so what I do is in the end conventional agriculture, right? So this is not ecological agriculture. Within conventional agriculture, I would say that there is a very big leverage to save fungicides and so on. Whether these tools will be usable in these systems, probably yes, if they go into machinery level, but not, I would say, not if it goes with satellite data, because it's simply the scale is too small for agroforestry. I'm not sure, but for permaculture, I don't know. I know the no answer is no.
Thanks, Damon. So we have come to the end of this show. Thank you, Damon. Thank you, Walter and Bijan. You were great. I really enjoyed seeing your presentations and your introductory videos. Well, that was the first show of the WildFormat. I have to thank at this moment the production team, but also, of course, to Correlate, and most of all to the audience that was here today. We will be doing this show once a month, but now we have the summer break, so the next one will be on September. So just be prepared for what is coming. And yes, as I mentioned before, you can follow us on our social media channels, and also our speakers. You can follow them on their social media channels. And yes, to end the show, to come to an end, we will show one more song of the Mama Yaku project. It is called Tonada de Luna Llena con Salida Astral. So it's like this song, it's a remix of Simon Diaz's song Tonada de Luna Llena with kind of an astral outgrow. Yes. And it's a very, very nice song. I hope you enjoy it. Before that, I just want to mention, just 1 second, if we go back.
Thanks, guys.
The singer name is Nani Seosa. She comes from Colombia. I didn't mention that before. I wanted to do that just to finish it. This show, the dancer is Natalia Iberra from Argentina and Germany. And the shaman you see there is Imbaya. So just enjoy that, and don't forget, we have to now save the world and save the environment, and let's do it in a wild format. My name is Ismael. I'm the host of this show, and I'm really excited to see you the next time. Take care.
Thanks, Ismael.
Bye-bye.
Go.
Bye.
Bye bye.